Over 1.7 million Canadian households are now considered at risk of displacement, and that number could skyrocket in 2025. Why? Because a wave of new laws just passed, and most people haven't even heard about them yet. Imagine waking up one morning to find out your home is no longer legal to live in, or that you're being fined thousands of dollars for not following a rule you didn't even know existed. Sounds unbelievable, right? But it's already happening, from families in Toronto losing their homes due to zoning changes, to homeowners in BC forced out by climate risk maps. These aren't just isolated cases. This is nationwide change, and it's hitting faster than most of us are prepared for. In this video, we're breaking down 10 shocking laws that could force millions out of their homes, and by the end, you'll understand exactly what's at stake and how to protect yourself. Number 10. Federal Eviction Fast Track Program. Imagine getting an eviction notice and having just a few days to respond before you're legally forced out. That's not a distant nightmare. It's becoming reality under Canada's new Federal Eviction Fast Track Program, introduced as part of the 2025 Rental Enforcement Reform Act. This law is designed to speed up the eviction process for cases involving unpaid rent, lease violations, or criminal activity. On paper, it sounds like a way to help landlords regain control of their properties quickly and deal with problematic tenants more efficiently. But in practice, it's stirring a storm of controversy, especially among tenant rights groups who say it strips vulnerable renters of their right to a fair hearing. Under the old system, evictions often took weeks or even months to process, giving tenants time to prepare, respond, or work out payment plans. Now, the new fast-track model could see renters removed in as little as 10 days, depending on the province. The appeals process has been shortened, deadlines are tighter, and the burden of proof is shifting. For landlords, this is being praised as a long overdue reform. For tenants, it feels like the rug is being pulled out from under them, especially those already struggling due to inflation, job loss, or health issues. So, what can you do? If you're a tenant, now's the time to get familiar with your province's new eviction laws. Know your rights, document everything, and don't ignore notices, even informal ones. If you're a landlord, understand the legal steps required to initiate a fast-track eviction, because one mistake can backfire. The most important thing? Be proactive. Don't wait until a notice is taped to your door or slipped into your inbox. If this law concerns you, or you've already been impacted, drop a comment below and share your experience. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, because in the next video, we're covering how to fight unfair evictions and win. Your home may depend on it. Number 9. Urban sprawl restrictions. Across Canada, urban sprawl is being squeezed like never before. Provinces like Ontario and British Columbia have introduced strict new laws, limiting how far cities can expand into surrounding rural and greenbelt areas. These urban sprawl restrictions, framed as part of environmental protection and sustainable growth strategies, are already reshaping the future of housing, and for many, it's not in a good way. On the surface, these laws aim to protect agricultural land, natural ecosystems, and drinking water sources from being paved over for housing developments. Sounds reasonable, right? But the unintended consequence is that it's drastically limiting where new homes can be built, pushing real estate prices even higher in already dense urban zones. Developers are being told no more often, especially when applying to build on land that was previously considered fair game. Entire subdivisions that were once in planning stages have now been frozen or canceled altogether. That means fewer housing options, longer wait lists, and soaring demand in areas already struggling with supply. For homeowners, this might sound like good news at first. Less development often leads to increased property values. But here's the catch. If you're living near the edge of a city, your property may now be stuck in a no-growth zone, reducing its future value and development potential. For renters and first-time buyers, the result is even tougher. Fewer choices, higher competition, and more pressure to move further away from city centers. Municipalities are being pushed to prioritize infill development and vertical growth instead of spreading outward. That could mean more high-rises in your neighborhood, fewer green spaces, and increasing congestion if infrastructure doesn't keep up. While the goal is to combat climate change and preserve Canada's natural landscape, the reality on the ground is more complex, and for many more stressful. Urban sprawl restrictions might save farmland, but they could also make the dream of owning a home feel even further out of reach for millions of Canadians. Number 8. Anti-renovation laws that could protect or punish. In 2025, several Canadian provinces have taken a hard stance on one of the most controversial housing practices: renovictions. This is when landlords evict tenants under the pretense of needing to renovate a unit, only to raise the rent afterward or bring in new tenants at a much higher price. The new anti-renovation laws are designed to stop this abuse. But while they aim to protect renters, they're also causing headaches for honest landlords, creating a tense divide across the housing market. Under these new laws, landlords must now meet stricter legal requirements before evicting tenants for renovations. In many provinces, they're required to submit renovation plans, obtain permits in advance, and even compensate tenants or offer them the right to return at the same rent. In places like British Columbia, failure to follow the new rules can lead to hefty fines or legal action. For tenants, this is a long overdue win. It gives them greater stability and protects against being unfairly pushed out of their homes in the name of profit. It's particularly important in tight rental markets where finding a comparable place to live at a similar price is nearly impossible. But for small landlords, the story isn't so simple. Many claim the new regulations are too restrictive, making it harder to maintain aging buildings or carry out necessary upgrades. In some cases, landlords are choosing to sell their properties altogether, rather than deal with the red tape and legal risks. This tension is playing out in real time, as more landlords leave the rental market and more tenants fight to hold on to their homes. The laws are doing what they were meant to do, preventing bad actors from exploiting loopholes, but they're also creating a chilling effect on genuine renovation efforts. In the end, the anti-renovation laws walk a fine line between tenant protection and property rights, and as the housing crisis deepens, the balance between the two is becoming harder and more urgent to strike. Number 7. Climate risk zones and forced relocations. Climate change isn't just a distant threat, it's now directly tied to where Canadians can live. In 2025, under the National Climate Adaptation Strategy, the federal government has introduced new designations known as climate risk zones. These are areas considered highly vulnerable to natural disasters such as wildfires, floods, landslides, or extreme heat. And if your home falls within one of these zones, you could be facing the very real possibility of forced relocation. The strategy allows provincial and municipal governments to issue mandatory evacuation or resettlement orders in areas deemed unsafe, even if those areas have been populated for decades. Entire communities, particularly in wildfire-prone regions of British Columbia and floodplains across Alberta, Manitoba, and Quebec, are now under review. In some cases, local governments are buying out homeowners, offering compensation to vacate high-risk areas permanently. It sounds like something out of a disaster movie, but it's already happened. The town of Lytton, BC was almost entirely destroyed by wildfire and remains largely uninhabited. In other regions, homeowners are receiving letters informing them that their land may soon be deemed unlivable, not because of anything they've done, but because nature itself is becoming too dangerous to ignore. The emotional toll is massive. People are being told to leave the homes they've built their lives in, sometimes with no clear plan on where to go next. And for those who choose to stay, insurance companies are increasingly refusing coverage, leaving them exposed to financial ruin if disaster strikes. The climate zones are based on detailed scientific data and projections, but for many, that doesn't make the reality any easier. It's not just about losing a house, it's about losing communities, memories, and security. This policy may be necessary for long-term safety, but in the short term, it's disrupting lives, creating uncertainty, and reminding Canadians that the effects of climate change aren't decades away. They're right outside the front door. Number 6. Foreign ownership ban extended. In a move that has sparked both praise and protest, the Canadian government has officially extended the foreign ownership ban on residential real estate through 2027, tightening the rules and expanding its reach. Originally introduced in 2023 as a 2-year measure to cool the housing market and improve affordability, this law bars non-Canadians from purchasing residential properties across most of the country. Now with the extension and added restrictions in 2025, the impact is being felt more deeply than ever. The updated version of the law not only extends the timeline but also closes loopholes that previously allowed foreign buyers to purchase through corporations, partnerships, and trusts. It also increases penalties for violations, targeting both buyers and real estate professionals who attempt to skirt the rules. The government argues this is necessary to reduce speculation and ensure homes are being bought by those who plan to live in them, not use them as investment vehicles. For many Canadians struggling to enter the housing market, the extension feels like a step in the right direction. It's seen as a way to prioritize local buyers and stabilize prices, particularly in hot markets like Vancouver, Toronto, and Montreal. However, not everyone is cheering. Critics argue that the ban could hurt Canada's reputation as an open global economy. It also risks discouraging newcomers and immigrants, many of whom come to Canada with the dream of owning a home and building a future. Some worry that the law sends a message that outsiders aren't welcome, despite contributing to the economy and population growth. Meanwhile, there's growing debate about whether the ban is actually working. While it may reduce some speculative buying, it's unclear if it's truly addressing the core issue, a lack of housing supply. For now, the message is clear. Canada's housing market is being reshaped and the rules of ownership are changing. The foreign ownership ban is no longer a temporary fix, it's becoming a long-term policy with lasting consequences for who gets to own a piece of the country. Number 5. Vacancy tax expansion. In an aggressive push to address Canada's deepening housing crisis, governments at both the federal and municipal levels have moved forward with a significant expansion of the vacancy tax in 2025. What started as a targeted policy in major cities like Vancouver and Toronto has now spread nationwide, and it's catching many homeowners and investors off guard. The vacancy tax, also known as the empty homes tax, is a surcharge applied to residential properties that are left vacant for more than 6 months in a calendar year. The idea behind the law is simple: discourage people from holding on to empty homes while thousands of Canadians struggle to find a place to live. But with the expansion, the rules are getting stricter, and the penalties much higher. In some cities, the tax rate has jumped to up to 3% of the property's assessed value per year, a figure that can add up to tens of thousands of dollars. What's more, the list of exemptions has been narrowed. Seasonal travel, renovations, or ownership changes are no longer always enough to avoid the charge. Now even part-time residents, snowbirds, and owners of investment properties are feeling the squeeze. Governments argue that these measures are necessary to free up housing stock and reduce speculation, especially in urban centers where vacancy rates remain low. However, many homeowners feel blindsided, saying the policies punish people with legitimate reasons for leaving a property unoccupied, whether due to illness, family emergencies, or travel. There's also growing concern about enforcement. Property owners must now register and declare their home's status annually, often through complicated online systems. Failing to do so correctly can lead to automatic penalties, even if the home was never truly vacant. For investors, retirees, and Canadians who split time between provinces or county, the vacancy tax expansion is creating uncertainty and added financial pressure. And for cities hoping to open up more housing, the question remains, will taxing emptiness really create more homes, or just drive more people out of the market altogether? Number 4. Zoning law reform. The end of single-family only. One of the most dramatic shifts in Canadian housing policy in 2025 has come through a sweeping zoning law reform that's changing the face of neighborhoods across the country. The long-standing tradition of single-family-only zoning is being dismantled, making way for duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, and even small apartment buildings in areas once reserved exclusively for detached homes. Driven by the Federal Housing Supply Accelerator Fund and supported by provinces like Ontario, British Columbia, and Nova Scotia, this reform is designed to unlock housing supply by increasing density in low-rise, high-demand urban neighborhoods. It's being called a bold step toward addressing Canada's severe housing shortage, but it's also sparking heated debates at the local level. For generations, single-family zoning defined the character of suburban Canada: quiet streets, spacious yards, and uniform housing. Now, those same areas could see multi-unit buildings go up next door, with more cars, more people, and more traffic. For some homeowners, that means the character of their neighborhood is changing, whether they like it or not. Supporters argue this change is long overdue. By allowing more units per lot, cities can add thousands of homes without expanding outward, reducing sprawl and making better use of existing infrastructure. It also opens the door for multi-generational living, affordable rentals, and starter homes in areas that were once completely out of reach for many Canadians. However, critics worry about overburdened services, parking shortages, and the strain on schools and transit systems. Others fear that developers will swoop in, buy up older homes, and erase the community feel in pursuit of profits. Municipal governments now have less power to block these changes as provincial and federal policies override local zoning decisions. That means the shift is happening fast, and residents across the country are being forced to adapt. The end of single-family-only zoning marks a turning point in how Canadian cities grow. Whether it leads to thriving, inclusive communities or increased urban tension remains to be seen. But one thing is certain: The suburban dream is being rewritten. Number 3. The green building mandate that could empty out old homes. Canada's push toward a greener future has taken a sharp turn into the housing sector, and for owners of older homes, the consequences could be serious. The newly introduced Green Building Mandate, part of the federal government's 2025 National Green Infrastructure Plan, requires all residential properties to meet strict new energy efficiency standards within a set timeline. While the goal is to reduce carbon emissions and modernize housing, this law is putting millions of older homes at risk of non-compliance and even potential vacancy orders. Under the mandate, homes must pass a new energy performance rating system to remain legally habitable. That means outdated insulation, drafty windows, inefficient heating systems, and poor ventilation are no longer just inconveniences, they're violations. Property owners are now required to carry out costly upgrades or face serious consequences, including fines, loss of occupancy permits, or in extreme cases, forced relocation until the property is brought up to code. For owners of heritage homes or low-income households, this is a devastating financial burden. Retrofitting older houses to meet modern efficiency standards isn't cheap. It can cost tens of thousands of dollars, with limited government rebates available and tight deadlines adding to the pressure. In rural and northern communities where construction costs are higher and labor is scarce, meeting these new requirements feels nearly impossible. Municipal inspectors are already conducting audits, and non-compliant homes are being flagged. In some areas, families have been told they must vacate until renovations are complete, turning beloved family homes into temporary construction zones or leaving them empty entirely. For renters, it also opens the door to renovictions, as landlords use the mandate as a legal reason to evict and renovate, then return with significantly higher rents. While the intention behind the Green Building Mandate is rooted in environmental responsibility, the rollout has triggered a wave of anxiety across the country. For many Canadians, especially those living in older or modest homes, the risk of being priced out or pushed out is becoming all too real, and the future of housing is being shaped not just by affordability but by sustainability mandates that few saw coming. Number 2. The law that's turning Airbnb hosts into eviction targets. In 2025, a growing number of Canadian cities and provinces have introduced tough new laws targeting short-term rentals, and the impact is sending shockwaves through both the housing market and the Airbnb community. Once seen as an easy way to earn passive income, platforms like Airbnb and Vrbo are now being tightly regulated under laws designed to tackle the housing crisis. Laws that are not only shutting down listings but turning some hosts into accidental lawbreakers and even triggering evictions. In cities like Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, and Victoria, new municipal bylaws and provincial policies now restrict short-term rentals to a person's primary residence only. That means if you own a second property or rent out a basement suite, guest house, or condo you don't live in full-time, you could now be in violation of the law. Fines range from $5,000 to $100,000, and in some areas, authorities are working with platforms to automatically delist unauthorized properties. But here's where it gets even more complicated and dangerous. Landlords who previously evicted long-term tenants to convert their units into short-term rentals are now facing legal action. In some provinces, those evictions are being challenged retroactively, and tenants are suing to reclaim their homes or receive compensation. It's a legal and financial nightmare for property owners who didn't see the crackdown coming. Meanwhile, renters who sublet units on Airbnb without permission are facing immediate eviction, as landlords now have stronger tools to remove tenants violating lease agreements. Some tenants are being kicked out within days of a listing being discovered. These laws were introduced to combat housing shortages, with officials arguing that short-term rentals are eating up valuable supply and inflating prices. While the policy's intention is to bring homes back to the long-term rental market, the fallout has been intense. Thousands of listings have vanished, income streams have dried up overnight, and both hosts and renters are being caught in the legal crossfire. In today's Canada, being an Airbnb host isn't just risky. It could mean losing your property, your income, or even your home. Number 1. Landlord licensing programs. In 2025, a growing number of Canadian municipalities have rolled out strict landlord licensing programs. A major shift in how rental properties are managed, regulated, and even occupied. What used to be a mostly unregulated space is now facing mandatory inspections, annual fees, and compliance audits, and landlords across the country are feeling the pressure. These programs require every landlord, whether they own one unit or a dozen, to register with their local municipality. pay licensing fees, and undergo regular inspections to ensure their rental units meet health, safety, and maintenance standards. The goal is to improve living conditions for tenants and crack down on negligent property owners, especially in areas where substandard housing has become a growing issue. But while tenant advocates see this as a long-awaited step toward accountability, many landlords argue that the system is bureaucratic, expensive, and difficult to navigate. In cities like Toronto, Hamilton, Windsor, and Ottawa, non-compliance can result in hefty fines, license suspension, or even forced closure of rental units, effectively pushing people out of their homes if the property is deemed unlicensed. The licensing process often includes mandatory training courses, property inspections, and proof of insurance. In some areas, landlords must also provide evidence of proper tenant communication procedures, complaint handling processes, and even community impact assessments for multi-unit dwellings. This means that owning and managing a rental property now comes with similar responsibilities to running a regulated business. For small landlords, especially those renting out part of their home to help with the mortgage, these new rules can feel overwhelming. Some are choosing to exit the rental market entirely, which ironically may reduce available housing in the short term. Others are increasing rent just to offset the added costs of licensing, maintenance, and compliance. While the long-term vision behind landlord licensing programs is to create safer, better quality housing, the growing pains are undeniable. For both landlords and tenants, the rules of the game have changed, and failing to keep up could mean losing your rental property, your income, or even your place to live in a rapidly shifting housing landscape. Canada's housing landscape is changing faster than ever, and these new laws are already reshaping where and how people live. Whether you're a homeowner, renter, landlord, or investor, staying informed isn't just helpful, it's essential. From forced relocations to strict zoning and rental rules, the future of housing could impact you more than you think. If this video helped you understand what's happening, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss future updates. And tell us in the comments, which of these laws shocked you the most? Let's talk about it.